welcome to another episode of Oops All Dragons. I'm Lissa.
I'm Varun. Stoked to be here again.
Always a pleasure. Always exciting to be here. Always a great day here in the Oops All Dragons pocket dimension. Whatever.
Our demi-plane, as we're going to start talking about in this episode. But, you know, before we get into our subject today, what's been going on with you, Lissa?
Not much. Just work. Just kind of... This week has been real topsy-turvy. Brain soup. But I'm here, and it's great. I think that there's something about talking about D&D and, like, reading the source book and whatever. Like, it's
keeps
less,
you sharp.
Yeah. It's less eating soup with a fork and more just using the fork to pick out the potatoes.
All right. That's a weird analogy if I've ever heard one, but...
Don't worry about it.
On my side, I have been playing The Messenger on Switch. That's actually a pretty fun Ninja Gaiden-y type of game. I finished the first half, and now there's a bunch of time travel going on in the second half. I didn't even see that coming. And I literally got off of my my bi-weekly campaign right before this, where the party was actually able to slay an adult black dragon, only losing 2 of their party members along the way. They almost died. Both of them almost died if the party hadn't killed the dragon on the exact turn that they did. Otherwise, next turn, some hazards would have happened, and those folks would have just gotten some automatic death fails, and just been dead.
Oh boy.
So
it was a close call.
It was a close call of a session, but it was good.
Do I know who it was?
Yeah, I think you know everyone in that group. It's Nikki's group.
Oh, yeah. Who died? Who almost died?
Nikki almost died.
Not her. The whole point of that game is her.
Yeah, she's like the main crux, the main driving force of that campaign, because her sister's the evil big bad. And yep, she just nearly died.
I mean, like, if she had, would anybody else have been just like, we're going to continue the quest, or would they have been like,
they're in the
all right,
position.
we're gonna go.
They're in a position where they would have needed to continue anyway, but yeah, I would have had to figure out some stuff on, like, do we bring her back to life? What do we do here? I think I figured out how I would do it, but it would be a harsh sort of comeback. But yeah, it was it was harrowing. It was like, one turn, our friend Baker finally got to use his Dragon Slayer weapon, and yeah, he's a rogue, so it's his regular damage. He's got the green flame blade because he's a arcane trickster. He's got sneak attack, and then he's got the Dragon Slayer damage on top of that.
I'm so glad he finally got to use that. He's been wanting to use that for months.
Yeah, he got to use it on a dragon. He got to get the kill shot on a dragon. The only thing he could have done better is if he crit on it. He probably would have killed that thing in like 1 or 2 hits with that.
Wow. Love to see it.
Dragon Slayer weapons are
that funky little cat man.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a tip for aspiring DMs. If you're gonna throw your party into a dragon, heavy sort of thing, or a dragon's the last boss, and you want it to be more climactic, or if it's if the dragon's like the big baddie, don't just be aware. Dragon Slayer weapons make fighting dragons way easier. It's still tough. They have the legendary actions. They fought it in its lair, so it had its lair actions. It was messing them up, but they were able to pull it out because of him and that Dragon Slayer sword he has.
Amazing. So, I miss actually playing D&D so much.
We'll do a little bit of it tonight. We'll be doing a tiny.
We're gonna be doing DM prep is what we're gonna be doing.
It's part of D&D. It's part of the creative process.
I mean, I guess it'll have to do.
It'll help set you up for your next campaign when that is ready to go.
Whenever that is.
When you have the time to pursue that.
Yeah, I need to get fired soon. But I can actually play D&D.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing, and watching Loki. I guess I watched the first couple episodes of that. He's your boy. Have you seen any of that?
No, I have not.
Oh, really?
I've been busy.
Oh, okay.
It's weird how working in the entertainment industry leaves you with absolutely zero time to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to it. Don't you fret. If there is one thing in this world that I will find time for,
I was gonna say, Loki's your boy, right?
Yeah, I've been.
Tom Hiddleston's your boy, right?
It's an if you know situation. Part of like how I met your significant other, and therefore how I met you, was how obsessed I was with Marvel, but specifically Loki on Tumblr in like 2013, 2014.
Wow.
Like, it's a time.
Okay.
It was a time. What a time to be alive.
Now he's got his own feature, and no spoilers, it's just good. The first 2 episodes, pretty damn good.
Yeah, what I've heard is something along the lines of like Thor and Loki Blood Brothers, where he's like reconciling with like, am I a bad guy kind of situation.
Pretty much.
Does that sound accurate?
It's like it's Loki before he has any character development, but still being witness to that character development, and it's just like, am I the asshole here?
Are we the baddies?
Are we the baddies? Our uniform says skulls on them.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I saw a clip just out of context of like Tom Hiddleston whipping out his Latin.
Yeah.
It's like Pompeii or something. I don't know.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, look at you using your classics knowledge. Aw. You know he had fun with that.
Yes. You can tell. It's like,
absolutely.
I get to use this.
And you know what we can have fun with, Varun?
Mm-hmm.
Van Richten's Guide to
we're getting
Ravenloft.
right into it. Yeah, we already talked about a little bit about D&D. So here we are, just jumping right in.
I think we can have a lot of fun with this source book. I think this source book was made just for me. There's one thing in particular in this source book that it just feels very like a beautiful cake hand delivered to me. Just beautiful. Maybe we'll get into it, or maybe I'll get into it another time. But
okay. So yeah, Van Richten's Guide just came out, this month, right? Or was it end of last?
It feels like a few weeks ago now.
Not a lot of... This is very recent, so we've just now dug into it.
Yeah. Although by the time this episode comes out, it'll be a few weeks.
Yeah, maybe a month after. But still, yeah, it's still topical. We are still as topical as possible here.
It's still relatively new. Relatively new. Even though they're already there's 2 more books that are about to come out.
Yeah, but I can tell, as soon as I saw some of the release stuff for this and then started getting into it, I'm like, oh, this is the Lissa book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tasha's is still probably the one I'll recommend beyond the core starting books, just because it gives you so much from all the other ones pulled together. But this one is like, do you like to be spooky? Do you like witchy, vampire-y, zombie-ish
stuff? Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
I have such wonders to show you.
Oh boy. So it's no secret on this podcast that I have a soft spot for Curse of Strahd, and that's a game I've wanted to run for a long time, and I've quote-unquote been working on that. And this this book really, it's perfectly timed, because I had some things that I've been mulling over with Curse of Strahd that I think this book absolutely gives you the tools to expand and get creative with some of the concepts that get introduced in Strahd. I think they very cleverly take the idea of like this singular adventure and to give you the building blocks to how to build your own similar but different ooky spooky kooky ooky adventure.
Yep. So,
and I do very much enjoy it.
Yeah, so for those of you who are, again, new, may not have exposure to Curse of Strahd, the Shadowfell, the Domains of Dread, it's the spooky demi-plane area of D&D where it's not an actual place. It's these areas of mist that can pull in adventurers for whatever reason.
It's a collection of places, really.
Yeah.
If you want to get really nerdy about it, like within D&D lore, there are like several planes of existence. There's like the 9 hells. There's the sort of a celestial plane. There's the prime material plane, which is usually where you hang out. That's where normal people tend to be.
The astral plane, or the ethereal plane.
There's like
the elemental plane, so like if you go the plane of fire, everything's just fire, you die immediately.
Yeah. The elemental planes, and like there's the Feywild is a separate plane entirely, and there's the Shadowfell, which is supposed to be sort of the Feywild's opposite, in the same way that like the celestial and the hells are opposites, and like the 4 elements exist in this sort of balance between the 4.
Yeah.
Right. They have a balance between the 4 of them. But sort of like the idea is that all of these planes exist sort of in a balance and in a sort of tenuous connection, and they sort of feed magic. It's sort of like how magic cycles through these like worlds and into the prime material plane.
So
and then the abyssal plane, but we don't talk about her.
Yeah. So
we don't talk about the abyss.
All of this, Van Richten's guide covers the domains of dread, and one of the first things.
Van Richten's guide doesn't necessarily cover like all of the planar bullshit. That's I think.
Yes.
I think that's actually in the DM's guide.
Yeah. No, that's what I said. The domains of dread of like
So the Shadowfell specifically is what's covered in Van Richten's guide. It kind of expands more on the concept of what it is, and I mean obviously you can still do whatever you want with it and say it is whatever you want. But this is one idea and one way to play with what the Shadowfell is, and it is as a collection of these dreadful domains, which are essentially prisons for one particularly evil person, and sometimes some stray people who get caught up in the blast radius of whatever heinous thing they did at one point to get them sort of plucked out of wherever they were into the Shadowfell, into this sort of
this place, wherever that
this
place
sort of
might
bubble
be.
of misery created just for them.
Or sometimes you get handwritten invitations and you just walk in.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say one of the if you can't tell, it's really horror based, which is one of the first things that it actually touches on in the book. Before it touches on lore or mechanics or anything, it touches on tone, because the book is talking about these domains of dread, and the whole tone that the book goes for is you're supposed to build dread, you're supposed to build horror, the party's supposed to be afraid, as much as you can get to that within a D&D game, which I think is possible. But it's at the very beginning it talks about two major things. One, put like as DM, keeping like comedy to a minimum, and I don't think that's something that you can stop the players from doing so much unless they're like being egregious about it and just trying to like break the tension just cause. But also just on your side, this isn't meant, at least the tone that they're going for isn't meant for like kind of a goofy adventure. It's encroaching darkness. You're going into big evil spooky places that are the things that go bump in the night in this world. This is where they live.
Yeah. One thing I do like that this book establishes early on is talking to your players and seeing what they're comfortable with.
That's the second thing I was going to bring up.
Yes. And this is something that, like, as you read through this book, they keep harping on that. Is as the DM...
Consent is key.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that they keep harping on, is that as you as the DM are building out this world, building out this story, thinking of what the key things for it are, what the tone is, what kind of horror it is. There's a whole section on genres of horror. It keeps emphasizing, don't make it stop being fun. It's supposed to be scary for the characters, but not for the players. It's supposed to have that sort of horror movie effect where it's scary, but it's controlled. You can walk away from it if it gets too much. And it being something that is so customizable, you should be able to make sure that everybody at the table feels comfortable and is okay with what's happening, in that understanding that, like, there's a difference between being scary and creating horror, creating that gloomy tone, and literally using people's like trauma against them. That's shitty. And we don't want to do that, because this is a game and it should be fun. And being scared can be fun, as long as there's an acknowledgement that there is a line.
There's it goes back to our adage of like session 0, absolutely set the proper expectations, but especially in a horror game, because without that understanding of like what's the line and don't cross this, horror has that propensity to delve into dark stuff. So if someone has something that can trigger them, that doesn't that they don't want, that they can't have, like in a role-playing game, you as the DM need to know that, and you need to ask that up front. And then even if you establish that up front and the players say that they are okay, you should always have something like an X card rule, so in case things do start to go in a certain way and it starts to affect a player in a way that they didn't expect themselves, they can still throw that up, still you have a code word, have an actual X card, whatever it is, and be able to put that up to say like, I'm not okay with this. And at that point, it may be annoying for you as the DM, but it's going to be much worse for that person. So you definitely take, you stop, there's no questions asked, and the game stops at that point, and you reassess where it's going to make sure that this isn't going to touch on something that's going to play on someone's actual real life trauma or something. Definitely. And that's something I appreciate, which they've left out of a lot of the books, of actual like GM advice. They have a lot of that in this one, which I do like. Yeah,
those are like the two baseline things that I think this book does really well, is it explains how to build this sort of tone and this world, and the questions that you should ask yourself when you are building out this adventure, and also again, it's the same thing. It feels like we're a broken record. Communication. Talk to your players.
No, I think it's good. I think they've mentioned Session Zero a couple of times in these books now, but they really like go in depth on like this is what you should ask during a Session Zero, especially for like a horror-based game.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like they are taking a lot of community feedback and a lot of the things that the community's already been doing and just sort of ratifying it.
Codifying, yeah.
Yeah, codifying it as like official.
Yeah, because new folks coming in may not be in those communities and know that stuff yet.
It does make it more accessible.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think with that all said, let's get into some ooky spooky stuff.
I was going to say, beginning of chapter 1, all this, kind of good GM stuff, and then it's all mechanics. Chapter 1 is all mechanics, which I loved. So, what do you want to start with the new races, or do you want to start with the lineage system?
I mean, we may as well just go in order of well, actually no. Let's get into the subclass and the backgrounds. And then we could talk about lineages.
We're just gonna skip right over the thing that replaces race.
That's lineages, right? So
yeah.
No, we'll do that second because that's like the new thing. Let's do the thing that's already established. So we already know what subclasses are and what like backgrounds for your characters are. So this book introduces 2 new subclasses, one for the bard and one for the warlock. And in line with the theming of it, they have to do with the undead and being ooky spooky.
Especially
so the bard,
warlock one.
the warlock one, it's warlock the undead because the patron is an undead creature of some sort. And it really leans into the image of the warlock as necromancer and also the warlock as someone who defies the natural order of things. I think this is a really interesting subclass. Both of these are in that, like, I think there are certain... I'm really thinking specifically of like the druid, where it's a class that, like, by the way it's described, I feel like you can't really have a druid subclass that deals so heavily in necromancy, just because like necromancy by its nature is something
corruption of life.
Yeah, it's the corruption of life, or it throws off the balance of life and death. Although I'm sure at some point they're going to come out with like a necromancy flavored druid subclass. Yeah, and it's gonna be something. I think the closest thing is the spore druid.
Yeah, but decay.
That's not what we're talking about.
But yeah, decay is different from.
Yeah, decay is different from manipulation of death.
Bringing the dead back to life.
Yeah, and the College of Spirits bard, the idea of using, what is it? It's like stories.
Yeah, it's like stories or tarot, however they want to do it, versus actual singing and music to as their instrument.
Yeah, and I like the aspect of like lack of control with the spirits bard, because it feels right, especially in the way that the Shadowfell, things don't necessarily, 1 + 1 doesn't necessarily equal 2 in the Shadowfell. Things don't necessarily use common logic. They use nightmare logic. And in that, and I think that's an aspect in both of these subclasses and in some of the other new things here, there's this idea of that chaos and the sort of the fear that things aren't going to pan out the way you expect them to.
Yeah, nightmare logic is something that they reiterate a lot throughout this book, of like Yeah, sometimes things just don't work the way that they're supposed to work, and that's how things work.
Yeah, sometimes things don't make sense, but they are either like they make some sort of symbolical sense or they make no sense at all, and it's in that nonsense that the the fear comes in because you know that that's not how that's supposed to work.
Yeah, I think it's like an extension of kind of the wild magic warlock where all these effects could happen if you roll a certain thing, and now they're kind of rolling it a bit more into the class of like building that uncertainty that starts to build fear, dread of like do you hold back or do you use your magic or yeah, just all of that uncertainty kind of contributes to everything. The tone, I should say.
Yeah, definitely. And in that same way, so this book also introduces the idea of dark gifts. So within the Shadowfell, there is something known as the Mist and the Dark Ones, and it's this sort of like entity or collection of entities, however you decide to think about it, that sort of controls and controls how things pan out in the Shadowfell.
It kind of makes everyone a warlock, which, before we move on to the dark gifts, just touching on the warlock, I will say I like, just tone-wise, I like how the undead warlock subclass just becomes more dead as they level up. You go to level 6, and you no longer need to eat, drink, or breathe air. And then by level 14, you can basically become a ghost. So that's really interesting on just like you're losing more and more of your mortality, humanity, whatever word you want to use for that, as you get stronger. But the dark gifts give kind of a bit of that uncertainty to everyone because now it's bringing in something that's I think is a little more old school, where you get this gift that gives a benefit, but it has a state for potentially losing control and something negative happening as well.
Yeah, and there's that sort of idea of like you or your character asking for something, and it's similar to like a Fey contract. It's a even more horrific version of it where you get what you want, but it's twisted in some way.
Yeah, it can be, and they say it can be voluntary, involuntary. You can get this when you create your character. This can be something that's offered to the players as the campaign goes on, if they take up this dark gift. But just an example of what we're talking about, the very first one, the Echoing Soul. If you take the gift, you get channeled prowess, so you gain proficiency in 2 skills of your choice. Inherent tongue, you can speak, read, or write 1 additional language of your choice. And you have intrusive echoes, which is the drawback. So immediately after you make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw where you roll a 1, which can happen sometimes, very often to some characters, your soul's memories emerge and overtake your perceptions and experiences. You might see people around you as someone other than who they are, or become disoriented by a double experience in the world around you. And then roll on the table to determine the effects of these vivid perceptions. So you just lose control of your character. Not total control, but you lose control on your character's grip on like perception and reality for a little while. If you take this, you get the passive buffs, but then you also have this like sword of like, am I gonna start seeing things from another life going on?
Oh, you know what this has? This has a similar flavor to like the idea of like madness in oh gosh, is it Betrayal on Haunted Hill? Is that what it is? Oh
Yeah.
gosh, what?
Yeah. I have Betrayal and Dread too. They have madness systems. Even though Betrayal is a board game, but same thing. Yes, except I'm not saying these can't build, but these are definitely the beginnings of like screwing with the player, and maybe yes, that might be leading down the madness path.
Yeah, this almost feels like this feels like a bridge between D&D and Call of Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm. This is definitely Call of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade. A bit, it's a bit more in line with those tone wise, which again, I can see why you love the book. Which we'll get into negatives later on, but I think that the negatives are going to be a bit more ephemeral. But yeah, so you've got these new subclasses, you've got these dark gifts, which sort of are like the opposite of the gifts and the origin stuff that you got in Theros, where those were like boons from the gods. Now this is like a demon giving you a thing, but it might F you over.
Mm-hmm.
And then the backgrounds, they have the haunted one, which is one of the standard ones that came with the player's guide, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the investigator, which I think has also been in a previous book, right? There's so many at this point. So
I think what they've done here is just expanded on them a little bit.
Yeah, they expand them.
Just given them the spotlight, kind of. I think it's really just so that when you sit down for character creation with a game in this style in mind, like these are the kinds of backgrounds that would fit in with this world tonally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the idea of having them in there.
Yeah, and I think that the haunted one is just tailor made for this. Like you're literally haunted by an apparition or the ghosts of your past or whatever it is. Absolutely fits into a horror setting like perfectly.
And now for the juicy stuff, the lineages.
Yeah.
So this is something. Is this entirely new?
This is pretty new. Yeah.
Like this feels like something very different. But it also just feels like it's races with a different name. But I mean it's not race. It's not a race per se, because like your character could start out as any of the given races between any of the source books and become afflicted with one of these things, or your character simply just has always been one of these things.
Yeah, so it's a physical or magical transformation that happens to your character that either a Dark Lord or some entity has inflicted on them, or maybe they chose it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah, mechanically it replaces your race, so that you can then kind of spread out the ability score spread, the bonuses, however you want. You can do the 2 and the 1 and place them wherever you want, or do an extra, or do 3 increased by 1. Messes with your languages, changes up your creature type, so you're no longer a humanoid. You can actually count as an aberration, beast, celestial construct, dragon, elemental, fae, fiend, giant, humanoid, monstrosity, ooze, plant, or undead. I really want to be an ooze.
Well, I think with the 3 that they give in the book, those are all either humanoid, or for the Hex Blood, it turns your type into fae.
Yeah.
But I think the implication when they're saying that like you could be any type of creature, I think that's just to say like you can sort of homebrew your own lineage.
Yeah.
And it would turn your whatever character afflicted with that lineage into whatever other creature type.
Yeah, and creature type is an important thing. The example they put in the book is one of the textbook ones. Cure Wounds works on
everything except constructs.
Works on physical living beings. It doesn't work on constructs. Constructs don't have flesh, so you can't just be rezzed. You can't just be cured using the cure wound spell. Someone has to mend you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they give us 3 lineages coming in the book, but it gives you the building blocks to create your own. And I'm gonna take this ooze idea. I'm gonna make something out of it.
Make a note of that.
Yeah.
But the book gives us 1, the Dampier, the perfect answer for when you inevitably have a player ask, "Can I just play a vampire?" You've always been able to say yes, but now you can say yes even more, because there are. Like, that person that's asking that question is not prepared for the complications that come with being a Dampier.
You're basically Blade. You have a lot of the bonuses of being a vampire, but with less of the drawbacks, because you don't have sun.
You can still be out in the sun.
You can be out in the sun. I don't think you need to be like literally invited in. I don't think running water hurts you, like it does with regular vampires. It's basically you get a bunch of the good vampire stuff without. But you're not immortal. You're not as hard to kill as a true vampire is. You're kind of a vampire light.
But you do still thirst for something. The book gives you a table of 6 items, and of course, blood, flesh, spinal fluid, psychic energy. You could be the psychic vampire. What is it? The energy vampire?
The energy vampire. Yes.
You could actually just be the energy vampire from what we do in the shadows.
That's exactly what I want to be. I just want to talk people to death.
Yes. The other 2 options are dreams and life energy, which psychic energy, life energy. So one of them is just you bore people to death, and the other one is you just suck the life out of them entirely. Which feels so much more dramatic.
Or if you want to be JoJo type vampires, where you don't have to. Some of them don't have to touch or bite the victim. They can just like touch them with their fingers and suck the life out of them. Or in the case of the Pillarmen, who are like super mega evolved vampires, they can just brush by someone and just like absorb their body. We can get real wild with these ideas here.
Yeah. The concept of the vampire is pretty simple. It's as long as you are having to, take something from someone else to bolster yourself, you're a vampire. You're a parasite.
This would be an interesting one to play in like a campaign in a regular, not in the domain of dread, because then you're just like a pain to the party, because you're gonna have to keep indulging yourself, and like.
Or do you? Maybe you're just like tortured and you're just like, I don't want to, and then you're like Louis and you're eating rats, and then everybody's just like, just a little dramatic little bitch eating rats. He'll figure it out.
But yeah, you don't need to breathe. You actually get spider climb, which is pretty fun. You can just climb up on the ceiling. I love the
description for the spider climb is like, becoming a vampire has made you just so sticky. I love that idea, that you're just sticky.
But yes, Dampier, Vampire Light. Pretty fun. It's absolutely one that if someone chooses it in like a regular campaign, there's always going to be me like, hey, like there's just this like nubile looking person over here. Do you think you maybe want to like take them back and do something? And then if they take me up on that
hungry,
offer,
bud?
yeah,
it would be like the first time that a DM actually is like, hey, actually you're hungry. I've never had a DM like actually just be like, no, you guys have to stop and eat.
It depends, but yeah,
well,
you can. If you guys have
But
rations, or if
like,
you have like an Outlander barbarian, like, okay, I assume you get food, sure.
yeah.
But if we're doing more of like a travel campaign, and your whole thing is to like get from point A to point B, and this damn Pier Boy is just making it harder and harder along the way.
Yeah. Literally, just like there's somebody chasing them, and the only reason that person can track them down is the trail of dead lizards.
I got some ideas with the lineages in general, but yes, if someone picks a damn Pier, of just how to mess with them, because they get a lot of bonuses, but they have that feeding, which, ooh, that's a good button to press.
Absolutely. And next up after the Dampier is the Hex Blood lineage, which is my personal.
This one spoke to you.
This is the one that it feels like it was handed to me on a platter. It's got everything. It's got fae. It's got hags. It's got messing with magic. It's like, I was reading the description, and it feels like they looked at my notes for my warlock, and were like, yeah, this. Because literally my warlock, her whole story is that, like, she basically gave up going to wizard school and was like, hey, hag, give me magic, and I'll, like, do work for you, or whatever. And the hag was like, yeah, sure, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, like, I've always had that idea of, like, Dot slowly turning into a Crone herself, like a lesser version of her unholy mother, but this makes it so that I have a lot less work to do with that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do this, and I don't have to do that much, because this is already, like, it's perfect. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change a thing about it.
This is almost certainly something we're gonna roll into your game once everyone gets back to doing that.
Yeah.
Figure
Especially
out a way to turn Dot into a Hex Blood.
Oh my god! Especially now that Dot's, like, kind of on chill terms with the Crone. Oh my god.
You're gonna grow an elder cross on your head, just an extension of your body.
She's already a tiefling. Maybe, like, her horns, like, contort. I don't know. That's what I was thinking. Is that, like, her horns, like, just sort of change shape over time.
They go back, now they go forward.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
But
this is an exciting one.
You get telepathy, you get remote viewing, like, all the stuff you want.
Oh my god.
You've been asking me forever for a scrying mirror.
Oh my gosh. No, the Eerie Token. The Eerie Token. That's, like, the coolest thing. I'm just gonna read it. You can harmlessly remove a lock of your hair, one of your nails, or one of your teeth. This token is imbued with magic until you finish a long rest. While the token is imbued in this way, you can take one of these actions. Telepathic message, which you can send a message to the creature holding it. Remote viewing. If you are within 10 miles of the token, you can basically look through it. And it has a similar... The remote viewing has a similar mechanic as, like, oh gosh, what's the one where people can look through their familiar?
I think it's just find familiar, but also, like, beast sense.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's hex magic. And I mean, I already have Disguise Self and Hex, but it would just make sure that I didn't lose those things. And then the final lineage is the Reborn, for that player who's like, can I be a zombie?
Can I be a Frankenstein?
Can I be a Frankenstein? Can I just not die?
How edgy do you want to be?
What about... It's for that person that when you're like, you've failed 3 death saves, you're dead, and the player goes, what if I'm not? And before you were like, no, you're dead, roll a new character. Now you could just be like, okay, fine, you're a Zambo. You're a Zamboni. Like, yes, let's go. Reborn.
Deathless nature. You have advantage on saving throws against disease and being poisoned. You have resistance to poison damage. You have advantage on death saving throws. You don't need to eat, drink, or breathe. You don't need to sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. You can finish a long rest in 4 hours if you spend those hours in an inactive, motionless state, during which you retain consciousness. So these guys and the Warforged are just like buddies. Just standing up, not doing anything, just looking at each other instead of sleeping.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can absolutely see this being used to in a Frankenstein situation.
Yeah, no, that was my first thought too, is because that one is even still considered a humanoid.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have that limitation of like not being able to have spells that are
heal
only
you,
for, yeah. So the Reborn is a weirdly powerful lineage.
They're all pretty powerful.
Yeah, no. But I think the Reborn is the one with the least drawbacks to it.
Yeah. I think the way to mess with the Reborn is because they're so powerful, use that against them. Because what I would do is I would find some way to stick them in a place where, again, like throw them in the bag of holding or something, where they wouldn't die, but they also couldn't get out unless someone opened the bag.
Oh, I mean, like, isn't
Bag of devouring.
one of the monsters in here is the Bagman, who like pops out of a random bag of holding every night and like takes people into. It's so. I'm gonna absolutely have nightmares about the Bagman. I have no reason to, but
just roll a D100, and if it rolls a certain number, guess who's visiting you that night?
It's like opposite Santa. Instead of a gift out of a bag, you're going into the bag.
You're the gifts. Okay. So Deb here, you're basically Blade. Hex Blood, you're like a pre-hag. And Reborn, you are a zombie or a Frankenstein. Fun. And yeah, I just like the implications of these are the pre-made ones, but you can make your own. And yeah, you can be a dragon in a humanoid form, or an ooze that's that's a person somehow. And like how do all of these things? How does that work? And work through that with your DM.
Yeah, and like you can see how, in the same way, you can easily incorporate like werewolves and like.
Yeah.
I don't know, Wendigo, Chupacabra, whatever. Like, whatever sort of creatures that inspire horror and dread within you. And the idea of turning into... Ooh, the idea of turning into Mothman. What are the benefits that gives you, and what are the drawbacks of that?
Yeah. The precognition, and then, you know...
A solid bronze ass.
Oh, it's late. We got to the Mothman cheeks. I've never heard you laugh like that.
Is that a con? Is that a pro? Is that a con? I don't know.
Probably a pro. Oh. Your con is it's really hard for you to fit through doors. It's like, oh man, I gotta go through sideways.
I'm trying to stealth, but the clap of my ass cheeks keeps alerting the guards. Okay. Enough about Mothman cheeks. But one last thing we want to do, because we are like hitting that.
We touched on chapter 1, which is all the mechanical stuff. We touched on chapter 3, which is the lore stuff, as much as we wanted to talk about that. And, just at least my perspective on lore in these books. If you're playing in those areas, great. Gives you a good jumping off point, but as always, tweak it to your needs. But if you're playing in a custom setting, use it for ideas, but it's, less of an issue. But now, let's go to chapter number 2, the one we saved for last, paradoxically, it being in the middle, because it's about creating the domains of dread and creating a Dark Lord.
Yeah. So, if you've been listening from the beginning, you may have heard us, allude to the game that that Varun runs, that I'm in, and my character, this warlock, and her patron, the Crone. And we wanted to run a little bit of an exercise of how we would, just because the Crone is something that we've been needing to flesh out for a while, so we're going to make you guys sit through us doing that. And we're going to do that through the method that the book presents for creating a Dark Lord, which is sort of the individual who is the crux of whatever domain of dread that your adventurers find themselves in. Whether they know who that individual is or not is up to you and how your adventure plays out. But the Dark Lord is the prisoner of the dark forces that control the Shadow Realm.
Usually they've done something to deserve to be there.
Yeah, the Shadowfell is sort of filled with and moved by sort of exemplary shows of evil. I forget the wording, but it's sort of the extremes of the emotions that lead somebody to do the kinds of things that would justify them being essentially imprisoned for eternity to live out some version of
existence.
That tortures them as they still continue to strive for whatever it is that has driven them to whatever great evil that they did and have done and continue to do.
Yep. So we're going to do that for your Dark Patron who gives you your abilities. So the first thing it asks is the past life. It gives you a list of questions. And this is similar to the spur method, which we've mentioned a couple times before, of ask questions of yourself, of this setting, or in this case, the Dark Lord. And answering them is going to, fill in a lot of the gaps for when the players ask these same questions to you. So, Lissa, the Crone, where was she before the mist took her? Before she got into her domain that is the cradle?
So, I've been thinking of the Crone as an archfey figure. But with the way that this book presents the idea, it might be more useful for her to have just been a regular person, maybe with some sort of influence in a town on the prime material plane, at odds with official powers, official authority in whatever place that she ran her business in.
Okay. So, who was the Crone's family? If any, I guess.
I don't think she had any.
No family.
Yeah.
But then what was she? You said she was a woman at odds. She had some sort of position, right?
No, sort of, okay. So the way that I've been thinking about her in her past is that, I haven't really thought about her childhood or anything, just more
that was number 4.
Yep. And I would presume that would be just sort of your classic orphan who builds herself up kind of story.
Okay, but
A little bit Cruella.
was she raised by anyone?
I mean, like,
Is
yes,
her
she had to have been.
I'm just asking questions.
Uh,
Was her
no,
lack of parentage what led her down the road to who she is?
Yeah, I think she never had like a good set of role models, so she basically had to create her own sort of morality and her own like model for being like for survival.
So what was her childhood like then?
So I think that like she was just sort of on her own on like the streets, and like an orphan maybe, sort of like bouncing through a system that did nothing for anybody. She saw through sort of like the uselessness of it, and when she sort of came of age, she scrounged up whatever she could to start her own business. I think that I know that one of these questions later on is like, what was their first act of evil? Yeah. I think she did something. She did some crimes. I think she
what sort
to
of
come
crimes?
into possession of her inn, she had to kill the previous innkeeper, essentially.
Murder most foul.
Murder. Okay. I think she worked at this inn, or around the inn, or she worked the inn. Petty theft and such. But I think eventually she just sort of like decided that she deserved it more than the people running it did. Maybe they themselves were cruel, but not in a like villain mustache twirling way, but just in that sort of casual way that people can be dismissive of children. But she took it so personally.
I think the darker thing would be is if she was either taken in or at least friends with the original innkeepers, where they weren't really bad people, and she just kills them knowing that they haven't really done anything wrong. They've even maybe helped her out or helped other folks out, but she's still gonna kill them because she wants what they have.
Yeah, and I think that the crux of what she wants and like her the desire that like spurs her and like encourage her to keep doing the things that she does, that she justifies in her own twisted way, is that desire for like family and stability and sort of being looked up to in the community. That's really what she wants, but she wants the highest extreme of it. Not necessarily being
that's
like a lord or a lady of a town, but more in that way that like the barkeeper is really the one who like pulls all the strings in town in the way that like kind of a mafia boss does. I think that's more her flavor, is like mafia boss, more than official.
So, whom did the Dark Lord care about? Or, in this case, the Crone.
Right. I think the only person she's ever cared about is herself.
All right.
It's like purely self-preservation, but to the extreme where it's like at the expense of anybody else.
Very Cruella-ish. Who cared about the Crone? Who cared about her?
I think, to your point, I think maybe those innkeepers did. Well, we can name them even, because then they can be figures that pop up to sort of like torment her.
Yeah.
But I think they did genuinely care about her, and she just selfishly saw herself as better than them, and that's why she did what she did, where she saw herself as more deserving of all the things that they had, so she got rid of them and took what they had herself.
She couldn't
without really considering that what it is that she actually wanted was like, familial bond.
Yeah. She couldn't wait until they were dead to get the thing that she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Who hurt the Crone?
Can I say society? We live in a society. I mean, I think in that idea of if she was sort of like an orphan who was at first being thrown around in a system that sort of didn't really give a shit where she ended up, like, that's sort of who hurt her, is just sort of like a dehumanizing system. Where, like, because she saw herself not being treated with fairness, she decided that she didn't have to treat anybody else fairly either.
I mean, that comes into the issue of the Crone's kind of right in her justification for that. Like, every society in history has been inherently unequal. So, is that justification for what she's done, is that valid?
Well, so it's that thing of, like, great motive, still murder. It's like, okay, yeah, the system's unjust, but that's no reason to go around, like, killing and stealing from people and coercing people. What she goes on to do is, like, coercing people into sort of a cult. She sort of becomes a cult leader in her attempts to sort of... She tries to go mafia boss, but skews cult leader.
So whose respect or love does the Crone crave?
Everyone's.
Ah. Alright.
That one's... But I mean, like, specifically...
She blames society, but she wants society to love her.
Right, because she can't see that she can't see the irony in that.
That makes sense. And then the last one of past life is, what did the Dark Lord value?
I think that she sort of misunderstands the way things work in a certain way. So she values, like, valuable things in, like, that earthly material sense of, like, money and tangible goods, and also influence. She values being able to influence people and being able to make people do... Yeah, power, but not just for power's sake, but power specifically to instill whatever she wants.
Power over people.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Like, she likes to be able... She wants to be able to say that she is more powerful than the people who are actually in power.
So all of this is the preamble. Then it goes into the personality itself, which is very similar to if you're creating a character. It's an ideal, a bond, or a flaw. So for the ideal, in one sentence, describe an ideal that the Crone holds dear and governs her actions. One sentence.
Oof.
I know you have something.
Hold on, I'm workshopping it. I'm trying to edit it down to a sentence. Excuse me.
You have the bond and the flaws to work with too, so don't try to fit everything in just one shot. And remember, we're doing this as an exercise. It doesn't have to be concrete. You can listen back to this and be like, I want to change that.
Right. So I would say something like, power over people is better held in her hands than in the hands of local government.
The plebs.
Yeah, it's sort of like...
The scrubs.
I mean, honestly, I would say her ideal is mother knows best.
Yeah, that's much simpler. Yeah.
It's catchy.
There you go. So the bond, in one sentence, describe a person, place, or object that the Crone desires. Avoid a bond simply about power. Power isn't an end to itself. Power is a means to obtain a thing, a bond.
So,
what does she want?
What does she desire?
I think you already know this one. Just find a way to word it.
I mean, what would you say it is?
Family, like what she thinks family is.
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe even a real family, and she just doesn't know how to process that.
She doesn't even know how to attain it, so she goes about it in this twisted way of, like, because in her mind she's created this image of what a family is, and it is this her as this matriarch over adoring and fawning followers and children. So yeah, I guess her bond would be to create the family that she never had.
Well, you could go two ways with this. Is it like the hurt child route, where she just wants the family she never had, or is she recognize herself as the matriarch? Does she want to make the perfect family?
Yeah, I think that's what that is.
Because that's a different thing.
Yeah. She wants to create her platonic ideal, her personal platonic ideal of the perfect family, with her at the head of it.
Oh boy! Like, I really want to get you into One Piece. I want to show you the character of Big Mom and what she does to get a perfect family. Spoilers: it's have a lot of kids and be really shitty to them.
I mean, what it sounds like is me and whoever wrote Big Mama gotta meet for coffee. we have some conversations to be had.
You and Oda just meet up.
Like, hey, you got mommy issues too? Damn, that's crazy.
And then the flaw, in one sentence, describe how the Crone's personality causes her to act against her own best interests, especially in her quest to attain her bonds or desires. Flaws are usually negative or destructive behavior, such as fear, hatred, insecurity, jealousy, mayhem, obsession, selfishness, shame, that drives irrational behavior and irrational habit, causing the Crone, the Dark Lord, or others harm.
So there's a table here.
I was gonna say, or there's a table.
There's a table. And, like, I would just try to come up with one, but there's one of the options here on the table, number 8. I don't know love, only domineering obsession, and I chain objects of my affection to pedestals. I don't know if that... no, hold on.
Workshop a little more.
Hold on. So, I mean, there's a few of them here where I feel like that could work. There's...
Number 4. When someone loves me,
not so much. But number 3, I am always right, and anyone who doesn't agree with me is cut out of my life.
Ooh,
I think that one, not necessarily that she cuts people out so it's, I would say, I am always right, and anyone who doesn't agree with me, I will make them agree with me by whatever means necessary.
Ooh, very dark, as, you know, that's what we're doing here. And then the actual corruption, because all of this is like personality behind the scenes, how they got to where they are. So now, corrupt beyond redemption. What made the Dark Lord so evil? The Dark Powers consider an act to be evil if it's intentional, unnecessary, and successful, and most importantly, if it causes significant harm. Accidents, self-defense, deeds necessary for survival, and forced or coerced actions do not qualify. So it's got to be something that the Dark Lord took on themselves. The people that Dark Lord harmed, need to feel real, give them names, imbue them with agency. Like those innkeepers, give them some actual names and like give them some personalities. Irredeemable. Once the dark powers take an evil person, that individual's fate is sealed. Before the final corruption, a person can atone, but only if they take genuine responsibility, heal the harm caused, and reform to prevent future harm. Once the evildoer becomes a Dark Lord, it's far too late. Consider whether your Dark Lord had a chance to redeem themselves or not. And then they have some like present day questions. So you said, what was the first depraved act that they chose to commit? Killing the innkeepers.
Murder.
what was the Dark Lord? Was Dark Lord rewarded or celebrated with for their evil? Did that reaction encourage greater crimes? Were those rewards earned or justified?
I think she, either by the method through which she did it, or she just cleaned up after herself, she didn't get caught, basically. And,
Sure, the end was the reward, but that's not the end to itself. Like, becoming
Right.
an innkeeper, what did that
Right.
bring her?
It brought her in more, sort of into the fold with the community. I think she framed somebody for it. That person, so the harm wasn't just the murder of these two people, but also the, I think probably, punishment of an innocent person.
I was gonna say, yeah. Or,
And the community rallied around her to console her, because it would have been at a point where everybody sort of recognized her, or like, you know, the regulars would have recognized her.
Maybe it was an innocent person, innocent of the murder, but maybe it's one of these corrupt or passively cruel people that you're talking about, who were in power and didn't really care about the people beneath them. She used that murder as a tool to excise at least one of them. And, you know, twofold. Screwing over an innocent person, but also, like, using her power to do what she wants, to do that, to take control of the world, essentially, around her.
It's her beginning to exercise her powers of manipulation.
So, were those rewards earned or justified? Earned? Probably not, but justified? Gray area.
Yeah.
And did she repeat or escalate that wickedness to obtain something else?
So I think she became sort of, just sort of self-righteous, and saw herself as, like, the ultimate authority on, like, what is right and wrong, and what should be done in response to things that she deemed right and wrong.
What was the escalation?
What was the escalation?
I know you got to get to it at some point. Like, how does she start building a family?
Okay, so I do have a thought, but I don't know if it's particularly evil.
Okay.
My immediate thought is, like, there was probably like a regular in the inn, and like she knew that he was, like, abusive or something to
this is
his
what I was
children.
thinking too.
Yeah, this is the direction, because, like, it's just what feels right for sort of, like, where she ends up, because like we already know what the sort of, like, B point of this is, so it's just trying to build, like, the railroad tracks in between that. Yeah, so I think, like, she first befriends the kid, takes them under her wing, and then suddenly that kid's dad's just, like, not around anymore, and the kid seems to be doing great, and yeah, goes another murder.
Or, you know, he just disappeared, and she just took in the children like a good Samaritan.
This actually, okay, so here's a so I'm trying to think about at what point does she, because, like, part of the whole idea is that she's also this sort of, like, magic person, right? I think she's always had magic.
Well, I was going to say, one of the last things they ask is how did their acts attract the attention of the dark powers?
Right. So I think she's always had magic of her own. And I think what she starts to do, her escalation, at some point, I think at first she's just sort of disappearing these guys, but essentially Sweeney Todd's
and maybe
them.
I was gonna say, and maybe they're bad, so she can justify it in her mind, but then she starts to desire these children more than saving them.
Yeah, where her perception of the evil that these people are doing is just in the fact that, like, it's not even so much about that individual, it's about, like, she wants their child to herself.
Mm-hmm.
Because in her mind, she's saving that child from that parent. But like, she has no context.
I was gonna say, and in that process, once she starts the ball rolling,
it stops being about saving children from bad parents, but it starts being about saving children from being parented by anyone other than her.
Did she realize that she was losing any hope of redemption, and then just chose to keep doing it?
No, I don't think she has the self-awareness.
Okay, and then what evil act was so atrocious that the Crone's friends and families rejected them? Did the Dark Lord think this was warranted or unreasonable judgment? How did they react? Because, the mortals can react one way, and then the dark powers can feel another way.
Right. So, okay. Tell me if this sounds, like, fishy. So, I don't think it's so much... It's something that she... I mean, like, it is something that she did, but it's not just, like, a specific moment. It's the moment when what she did was discovered.
Yeah.
Because at some point, it's a little Spirited Away. It's a little bit, Circe from the Odyssey, where it's sort of realized that people start putting one and one together, where it's like, where'd she get all these pigs from? Where are all the men in our town disappearing to? Oh. Shit. Yeah. So she'd been turning people into animals to use as, like, poultry.
Oh, just straight up Circe, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so when and how did these acts attract the attention of the dark powers? Last one.
I think the moment that would have been she would have been at her most heinous is in the moment where people were questioning her on what she did, and she had absolutely no remorse, and she still thought she was right, and she didn't understand that, like, why what she did was wrong, and she was gonna keep doing it.
Okay. And maybe it's like a burn the witch sort of situation, where maybe she was caught or burned at the stake or whatever, punished somehow, found out, but then the dark powers like, nah, that ain't it, dog. We got something worse. We got something worse in mind. And that's the last one. How did the dark powers use her axe to craft the perfect prison domain for the Crone? The cradle in this case.
Yeah. So, in this case, the book describes when you're starting to build out the domains, because this is like the first question in, like, now to building the domain itself.
Yeah, we don't need to do the whole domain.
Yeah, we don't need to do the whole thing of that. Yeah. But the idea that I have is, because they describe it could either be just like one building or it could be like a whole country. Like, the size of it varies depending on what's necessary to torture this person. I think her influence was really just on this town. So I think this whole town got taken into the Shadowfell and turned into, or a reflection of this whole town got taken into the Shadowfell and is used as her eternal torture.
Okay.
And now I think sort of the idea of it is that everything is kind of normal, but there's this sort of I don't know. This is the question where I got stuck. I got really, really stuck on this one.
No, the Crone, it's a prison. It could be a it could take some rethinking, but she could have this place, but be all alone. So she has no one to be matriarch over, to have power over.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible prison for her. You can reduce the size, and it could just be the building, so that she's trapped in this building forever. Or it could be she's trapped in a place. All the individuals are rebellious against her, and she hates it. Or she gets what she wants, and they're all subservient to her, but she realizes that she hates it because now there's no chase with creatures with no free will. They're just empty vessels, and it brings her no joy. Because like you say, she finally gains some self-reflection, some self-realization that this thing that she'd wanted is in fact the prison that she's been building the entire time. Bunch of different ways you can go with it.
That's definitely one direction that you could take it in. But I think, because, at least based on how they describe things here, is they can't reform themselves once they're taken into the Shadow Realm. They may physically change, but they don't, mentally change.
Which is again something you can play with.
Yeah.
You can just say no. Eventually, they can have some redemption. Sure. Why not?
For sure. But I like that idea that she still doesn't see the futility in what she's doing.
It could be, she's arrested development. She's stuck in the way that she is. Not to say that in your game or custom game or whatever, something couldn't break her out of that or impede that. But, she's in her... If you're going to take it as that, then, she's stuck, and she still thinks she's right. So then what does that domain look like? And what will the prison be?
I think... I like the idea of, she has everyone in her thrall, or at least she thinks she does. But there is, constant dissent that never goes anywhere. But the fact that it's always simmering is just sort of the eternal, an eternally simmering sort of baseline of disagreement.
Everyone's really passive-aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, they still don't think that they can do anything against her, but just the fact that they wish they could is enough to drive her insane.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because it seems like from playing, she would want beings with free will, but she has to give up some of her power to deal with that, because if she just goes and kills them all, she's all alone. But if she, bends them to her will, they no longer have free will themselves, and everything has been pointless. She wants to she wants them to say she was right.
Right. So her eternal what the cycle that she gets stuck in is sort of eternally having to scheme and manipulate people to get them to not hate her, basically.
Interesting.
But because the moment that is frozen, that this domain is frozen in, is the moment that her influence started coming into question. She can never fully maintain that control over people.
And on the other coin, maybe in the back of her mind, she can also never lose it. So she can't go up, she can't go down. She's stuck like in this midpoint forever, and she'll never get that resolution.
Yeah. And I think within this sort of narrative, there are a few like hardcore devotees of hers that like their faith has never been shaken. She still somebody who's clearly batshit insane still manages to have people who dote on her and follow her and like, are
doomsday cultists. Like the doomsday doesn't come, like, oh, they just got the math wrong. It's like it's like this date this year now.
Yeah. And but even within those, there are always people who manage to get out and see the situation that they were in for what it was. And so I think that's what the Crone is it does have power, like she is like magically adept and like in that way she is powerful and she does use her magic, but she's also just like really charismatic and like can talk people into following her. But I think that what the torture for her in her domain of dread is that it's not as effective as it should be.
As she wants it to be.
Yeah, all of her coercion and her powers and everything is not as effective as it was before the revelation of what she was doing.
And she's stuck in the domain. She knows that. Like, her power's only really good for what she wants outside of it. So she's got all the power, but she's the big fish in the small pond, where it doesn't particularly matter.
Yeah, and her influence can never really expand past that, where she once had
at least the ability to, and now she does not.
Yeah, where she still has delusions of grandeur of extending her influence past just her own little town to like a section of the world or even the entirety of it. But she's eternally stuck in this tiny little corner.
Yep. All right. So anything else to add about the Crone here?
She's got cool outfits.
That's her monstrous transformations. She's Cruella de Vil. She's got fashion. There's a lot more that goes into the creation of a Dark Lord, and you actually go into creating their domain. But I think that's a good, initial brainstorming version of that.
It's an experiment, a little example. I would actually, hey, dear listeners, I'd love to know what Dark Lords and domains you come up with.
Yes. Or lineages. Who wants to make that ooze lineage? Because I do. I absolutely do. Go ahead and, leave a comment about, what Dark Lord you'd create or what lineage you would create. You don't have to go into the details, but like, hey, I want to make a werewolf, or I want to make a Mothman.
Yeah. Tell us what aspects of Van Richten's guide, was there one thing in particular that got you real excited? I didn't get into it, but one of the dark domains that, the pre-written ones that come in the book as an example is one of a haunted train.
That's the Sire 1313, the
Sire
Morning
1313, the Morning Rail. That one is, I'm absolutely going to
that one looks cool.
That one looks so cool.
Yeah, use that as a setting. Haunted train. That's where the campaign is, baby.
Yeah. And I think, this was supposed to be one of our shorty 30-minute episodes, and we're at an hour and a half. So I think.
Nah, I think for this one there was a lot to sink into, so we were like, yeah, let's just go. We'll do a shorter one next time.
Make no promises. But I think we've exercised the old brain enough.
I think so.
There's still so much in Van Richten's that I'd love to get into, but we've really gotten into a big juicy bit of it. I really can't wait to actually play in this sandbox.
Yeah.
A bit
this
more.
is the parts we really liked.
Yeah. Hex Bloods.
Yeah.
Hex Blood.
Oh, yeah.
It was made for me. This hole, it was made for me.
Haunted train.
There's like a haunted circus one, which looks really fun too. Because I have another character that would fit really nicely into that.
Every character you create is just from a domain of dread. They're just from a haunted something.
I'm sorry that I'm ooky spooky, okay?
You have a type.
I have a type. And you know what's funny is I actually hate horror movies. Like not anymore. But for the longest time, I didn't like horror movies. I didn't really like horror stories. I don't like being scared. I don't like... But I don't know, something about adulthood where I'm like, cosmic horror? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get scared at horror movies just because I'm not one to get easily scared, but there's something to say for that thing that gets you. The one thing I'm always afraid of is heights, which is, you get some vertigo in there, but that's not the same thing of like the last time I got really scared was either the movie A Quiet Place, where it's like, oh my god, they can't make noise, or playing Resident Evil 2 Remake, where I'm running through the Raccoon PD and Mr. X is gonna find me, and oh my god, I can't. He might be around the corner.
I mean, it would be interesting to see like a domain of dread like based around the fear of heights. Like maybe it's the sheer side of a cliff and you're like having to precariously climb down it or something, or climb up it.
It's a
or
world. It's a world
roller
where
coaster that's just down.
It's if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, it's the Grand Canyon Skywalk where the entire ground is transparent, and
Oof.
It's horrifying.
I mean, I think this is the second time I'm gonna bring up the Magnus Archives on the podcast, but the Magnus Archives would be a really great thing to listen to if you like need inspiration, because the whole concept of that show is like base instinctive fears, the dark heights, fire, death, being buried alive, bugs,
spiders,
like
I assume
spiders was one, yeah, but spiders were more representative of like being controlled. The fear of being watched is a big one.
Ooh,
like
eyeballs.
It's a good one, and it's a really good for like if because I know I have trouble conveying that tone of like ooky spooky. Listening to stuff like that, listening to horror story podcasts, you can kind of like, if you listen to it with like the ear for like how are they conveying it, just like in the way that they're speaking, in the word choice, in the things that they're choosing to describe,
how to describe something
those things
in a scary
play
way.
Into creating that tone and creating that vibe.
Yeah, alright, check out the Magnus Archives. We're not sponsored by them.
I just want to be friends with them.
But yeah, you just want to be friends with them. Maybe we'll get them on the podcast. Who knows? Maybe they play D&D.
They do play D&D. They do have a D&D podcast.
There we go. We just have to get them on as guests or be their guests. Synergy.
Synergy, baby! And I guess with that...
Let's call it a night because it's...
Good night.
I need to go to sleep.
Goodbye.
Good night, everyone.
Oops All Dragons is a group effort. Our show is edited by Noel Hernandez, our theme was composed by Brendan Lyons, and our logo art is by Azif On Q. Links to more of their work and their social media will be in the show notes.